In this episode, we speak with Kristian Ranta, CEO and founder of Meru Health, an online holistic mental health provider. In 2016, Kristian founded Meru Health after losing family members to mental health struggles and seeing so many others struggle. From these experiences, he learned that access to mental health care was severely lacking and the available care often didn't work. His team felt that a more comprehensive, holistic approach could deliver better and faster results. Meru Health is backed by industry ventures, Foundry Group, and other notable investors. Prior to Meru Health, Kristian Ranta was an advisor at Kaiku Health and co-founder of Mendor, a development company committed to improving the daily treatment of diabetes. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and the managing partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Great Entrepreneurs, a podcast for driven entrepreneurs and business owners. Our podcast covers all topics related to the entrepreneurial journey, from ideation to execution to optimization and to reaping the rewards of a well-run business. In the minutes ahead, we'll share with you unique insights and tactics from some of today's most accomplished and inspiring entrepreneurs.
Kristian, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Thanks, RJ. Excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Your company addresses probably the most important issue facing our world locally and globally. It's become more paramount these days and pervasive, this issue. Tell us about what compelled you to start the company.
So, it is a big challenge we're facing as a society in general. I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I'm building my third healthcare business today with Meru Health. And I came from physical health and diabetes and medical devices and digital health. So that was my first two businesses that I built. And I was always a bit of a nerd. I studied computer science and information systems, my undergrad and graduate studies. And then I basically started learning. I went into mental health after kind of being into physical health first. And that's where I learned a lot about like technologies like digital health and medical devices and medicine in general. And I became so passionate about like using technology to improve healthcare and access to, to great healthcare for everyone, like more like democratizing access to the best resources. What happened to me, unfortunately, was that I lost my oldest brother, Peter, to suicide, unfortunately. And after I sold my last company in 2015, I really wanted to like build something in mental health care because of that. And I also felt through a lot of my own journeys of like doing a lot of meditation, being a biohacker for like 10 plus years, I realized that I want to also like build something that empowers people, something that empowers people to take better care of themselves and helps people kind of not be so reliant on the medical system or be so much in quote unquote like a victim mode where like, I can't do anything about this. I need to be somehow supported by the medical system, or I need to be on these drugs to survive. And sometimes that's the case, but also like so often that's not the case. There are other ways. And that was like kind of a lot of the experience that I had with my brother. And yeah, I just kind of became very passionate about this and wanted to contribute, maybe even, hopefully make a dent in this space in the future.
Mm-hmm. This is such a complicated topic. How did you go about solving this? I mean, there's different avenues or angles you could take, and there's probably certain facets which are more prominent than others. For example, loneliness or sedentary lifestyle. Did you hone in on a certain aspect to mental health initially?
Yeah, I've been like a curious guy all along. So I've always read and studied like everything I can find. And I was just curious about the intersection of technology and healthcare and also like going deeper into chronic illness and all that good stuff. And what I realized through a lot of my own life journey as well, like how I improved my own health as a biohacker, like exercise, sleep, diet, like all these things like meditation, like how they are really critical for building a holistic well-being journey for yourself. And what I realized through a lot of these things and a lot of the problems that I observed in my family and with my friends and like out there was that we've somehow completely misunderstood. And there's like things that we are not like fully grasping with chronic illness and with like mental health problems. We went through Y Combinator with Meru Health in 2018, and Y Combinator always asks companies in the beginning, like, what is one thing that you understand That's something that like pretty much no one else in the world understands. Like what's like a really unique edge in your knowledge or understanding? And this is pretty much what I answered then and what I'll answer now. We realized through a lot of my experience, a lot of my co-founders' backgrounds, that healthcare and health is not just a single like silo, meaning that like mental health is not just mental. Psychological issues are one part of mental health. Trauma, things like these are real and they do affect people's mental well-being, but there's a ton of physiological factors. Just give you a really concrete short example to help people understand what I mean. B12 deficiency, B9, B6, iron, magnesium, these deficiencies, as an example, are actually really common, especially among people with chronic illness and mental health problems. I mean, like really common, like 50 to 80% of people with these conditions have some of these deficiencies or many. And what that then means is that actually these can become the cause of your mental illness. Like it's actually well known in research that actually even B12 deficiency can cause clinical depression. And no matter how much you talk about it with a talk therapist, no matter like what kind of antidepressants or other things you take for that, it's not going to work because it's not the root cause. So this is just a short example, but just gives you an idea like why like overly simplistic and siloed perspective on our health and mental health is causing issues. We need to look at the full picture to understand like what are the reasons. And this is how we are building Meru Health.
That's fascinating. You know, I never associated B12 with consistent mood regulation. And I'm not sure if that's widely known, but that's a huge unlock.
Yeah, totally. These things matter. Like, I mean, look, most people don't know about it. And also most doctors don't know about it. But the research is all out there. And I was naive enough to kind of just study all that because I was so curious. I was like, I don't care what everyone says. I just want to read it myself. And I started reading a ton before I founded the company. And what I realized that the research is already there. No one's just pulling it together.
Are there other things that are just, you know, these unlocks that people should know about?
Yes, there's another one. So another big unlock was that I learned through my first two companies that like behavior change is really hard and it's at the core of any like health condition or like just living a good life. So what that means is that like basically how to facilitate behavior change is really, really important and it's really specific. Like it's not necessarily super hard, but it's just very specific. So give you an idea, normal healthcare delivery has always been episodic. We have like a visit to the doctor, visit to a nurse, like therapist, whatever. That's episodic, you know, maybe have a visit a week, maybe once a month, maybe whatever. But that's like nothing happens in between visits. There's no reinforcement for new habits. There's no accountability. Hey, are you following the regimen we agreed upon at that visit, like the last visit? There's nothing like that built in our normal healthcare delivery system. But what we realized early on with Meru Health, my co-founders, is that we got to build, like redo the whole system in our own universe, meaning that we became a full stack provider. And we built a whole new care process, which is not just episodic visits, but it's also a lot of proactive interaction by our providers with their patients in between visits to make sure that we have the onus on us instead of the patient having the onus. And that again is a fundamental shift in healthcare delivery because normally it is expected that the patient has the onus, not that the doctor or nurse will check in. And anyway, that's kind of like also goes towards more like coaching in a sense, but that's what we've deployed. And this makes a world of a difference in terms of like helping people actually stick to habits, learn habits, build habits.
Mm-hmm. And am I correct in that you have a 12-step process or 12-week process?
Yeah, we have a couple of different products. So we have more like a coach-led offering, which is a shorter, like 4+4 weeks. And then we have more like a therapy offering with Meru, which is kind of a 12-week initial provider intensive, like supported by a provider more intensely during 12 weeks. And then like kind of a more like a tail end of a follow-up after that. But yeah, it's more like a curriculum-based approach, more like a programmatic approach, which has been proven to be very, very helpful.
Can you give us a sense for the adoption of the solution and your go-to-market?
Yeah, sure. So we are available in all the states. Basically, we serve people in every zip code in the US. At least we have the capability of doing that. Not sure we've served every single zip code yet, but nevertheless. And we work with health payers like Cigna, Aetna, United, Optum, Blue Cross, Blue Shield plans. So we're available broadly through health insurance. And then, we just kind of do marketing in various different ways to tell people that, hey, you might be eligible. Like this is maybe something might be helpful for you. You may want to check it out. And it's covered by your health insurance. So that's kind of like how we go to market. So we do a lot of various different types of marketing activities with the health insurance companies, directly to consumers, with employers, and then kind of just spread the word, spread the love that, hey, this is available and potentially something that could be helpful for people.
And how effective has the solution been? I'm sure you're tracking a lot of metrics, whether or not people stay on or drop off the programs and whether or not they consider themselves healed to some degree.
Yeah, totally. Super important. So we actually started doing research very, very early on. Like after we founded the company in 2016, we already started the first research collaboration with UC Davis in 2016 and then 2017 with Stanford University. And we wanted to do that because we knew from the past from other healthcare companies building other healthcare businesses that it's really, really important, especially if you're building a new kind of intervention, which is kind of a novel intervention or a novel combination of different building blocks, to actually do a lot of research to show that, for your own sake, you want to know if it's working or not. And then, of course, like you also want to tell people that, hey, this is working and you want to publish and all that stuff. So we started doing a lot of research and started publishing. And we've now published 16 peer-reviewed papers from numerous studies that we've done with Stanford, UC Davis, UCSF, Harvard. And we've now clearly shown that Meru Health is roughly, broadly 2 times more clinically efficacious than antidepressants or normal therapy. So already moving the needle. And then in terms of engagement, that's again really critical because, something could be vastly effective, but if no one is able to use it and actually go through it, or very few people only, then it won't make a big difference. So we're roughly at 70 to 80% of people are kind of really going through the full journey and are really sticking and finding ways to change their behavior. And we look at it even more so in terms of how many hours people spend with us. On average, a member coming to Meru Health will spend 15 hours with us during 12 weeks. So that gives you an idea of that it's quite a lot of investment for people in terms of how much time they put in. And that's where you actually start seeing the behavior change happen and these new habits being rooted. Because, if you only spend 2-3 hours on something over a long time, it doesn't necessarily stick at all. But if you end up spending an hour plus a week, then that's where you start seeing that behavior change.
From what I'm understanding, maybe an initial assessment where you're seeing if someone's deficient in a vitamin or a element, that could be profound to kind of just have a supplement that works. And then secondly, there's probably a therapist that if you get them matching correctly, they could be a life changer.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the elements. And I agree, the psychological element is extremely important. There's a lot of stuff going on that needs to be processed and talked about and so forth. And the therapist is also a great body in a sense, accountability body as well, especially in our model where the therapist is kind of checking in on you every 2 days or so, hey, John, how are you doing today? I noticed you did complete a practice, or I noticed that you didn't complete a practice. What's happening? Can I be helpful? And if there's some severe situations that arise or some escalation needs or whatever, we're actually there for the patient, very regularly. We're able to catch those things quite early, quite often. So yeah, so that's very important. And then adding the physiological side, also what we talk about a lot is we go through some sleep education, what is good sleep, how much should you sleep? Sleep is really important for your recovery, for your immune system to function properly, things like these. Also, what's very important, what we kind of touch upon is exercise and how damn effective exercise is as an adjunct to any chronic illness as well as mental health problems. So those are a couple of things. Then we go into diet. We talk about what are healthy foods, what are things that are helpful to good mental health, good brain health, and what are some things that are very detrimental. I mean, as an example, ultra-processed foods have been clearly shown to be very detrimental to physical health and mental health and should be avoided at all costs, especially in these populations, for sure.
And to what degree, I guess, with all your research that you've done within kind of your company, to what degree does genetics play into mental health and whether or not your therapy is actually helpful in combating the impact of genetics?
Yeah, I love that question. I used to think that genetics play a huge role in mental health, and I dove deep into this data as well. There's a ton of research out there, but one specific piece of research came out of 23andMe, looking at are there genetic markers or any kind of genetic relation with depression? And what they actually found was there's no clear signal. So it seems that based on the current understanding that genetics may not play as big of a role in at least most mental illness as maybe we thought in the past, which is a really good thing because what it means is that you can affect it yourself. It's not like that you're destined to be with a bad gene. And by the way, there's also like epigenetics, like you can also like definitely impact your gene expression. And that's a whole nother story. But like the takeaway from this is, unlike we've been told or unlike many people think, we actually have much more power over our own health. Even if we had, depression in the family, it still may have nothing to do with the genetics per se, maybe something completely different.
I was at a dinner last night and it was brought to my attention that someone's father, a friend of a father, had killed themselves, and this was pretty much later in life, maybe he was in, his 60s or 70s. Does age ever factor into this cycle or the life cycle of a person and their moods? So maybe they reach a certain age and for one reason or another, they think life is not worth living anymore.
Yeah, sad to hear about that. But yeah, I think at least what I've learned, so we mainly work with teens and with like up to like 64-year-olds. So we don't currently like serve Medicare populations or more elderly populations. But what I've seen and learned is that like in general, age is correlating highly with chronic illness. I mean, like as people age, they become more and more exposed to different environmental toxins, other things that like deplete their resources in their body, that deplete the body's capabilities of taking care of itself, like immune system, all that functioning. But also just the fact that we age. Like, I mean, like the body ages and eventually dies. So yes, there's definitely a correlation of like people having more mental health issues also at older ages, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be that way. I mean, like there's also a lot of older people. Like I'll just give you a concrete example. My mom, who's over 80 years old now, and she's had like a tough life. She's had several cancers she's healed from, and she's now being cancer free for like 15 years. And she's 81 now, 82. And basically, like, I mean, she's well, like she's doing really well now. And she's happy. She's like, of course, she knows that her time's coming to an end at some point. Like she's not going to live for another 80 years anymore. Could be 10, could be 20, who knows? But the point being that like the end of life is inevitable, but it doesn't mean that it has to be like a depressed end of life. So I think there's ways to also improve mental health and health in general for older adults as well, applying some of these same methodologies, looking at a holistic picture of one's health.
How does religion play into mental health?
I love your questions. I think personally, what I've seen, at least, again, just my 5 cents, is that it does support your emotional well-being very often. Because if people have hope, if they believe, if they have a positive message, if they have a positive set of beliefs, it actually makes a big difference. And why it makes a difference? Stress is a huge mediator in all illness. I mean, like someone with diabetes, with high stress, with low stress, completely different physiological outcomes in diabetes. Same thing goes for mental health. If you have really extreme stress and you have depression or bipolar, you're going to be a lot worse. If you have very low stress, you're able to regulate stress, you're going to be much better with your mental health condition. So all to say that stress regulation is something which is directly impacted by your beliefs and by your mental habits and thought patterns. So again, if you think about it from that perspective, if you believe, if you have hope, then you are also less stressed. And if you're less stressed, you're going to be better off on the physical health side as well as your mental health side.
Curious about the influence of community, and I'll kind of introduce this question by saying there's the happiest person in the world. I think if you search it on Google, it happens to be a monk, right? So someone who maybe has a community, but is not overly focused on community. In fact, they could live a solitary lifestyle. How does community play into mental health?
Well, I mean, maybe Matthew Ricard you're referring to. Yeah, I read about him. Yeah, so community is very important because humans are social animals. Like we thrive in communities, and like historically, from an evolutionary perspective, like we have needed, even for physiological survival, we've needed our community. And it's been really, really important from a historical perspective. Less important for our survival as a physiological entity anymore today. But still, community and the interaction with other people is critical, like our mirror cells and all that stuff we know about neurology, how we relate to each other, how we thrive from, the interactions. So community is super important for most people, but there are exceptions. So I kind of understand the Matthew Ricard example because I once spent 10 days at a Vipassana retreat where I was meditating 10 days every day for 10 days, so 100 hours of meditation. And I was actually pretty stressed when I went in, but in like 3-4 days after like 30-40 hours of meditation, that all completely vanished. And day 5, day 6, I started being at this like a blissful state, which is like I was still like completely in this world, rooted in this world, but I started just being like so happy. And I started feeling like so great every day after that I realized that actually for some reason, we have these inbuilt capabilities that actually allow us to even be very happy without a lot of social interaction. It's like at Vipassana, you can't interact at all with other people. There are other people there, but you can't talk, you can't interact, you can't look at them, you can't do expressions, whatever. So you're kind of like in solitude in a sense, but I became like really, really happy. And I realized that actually you have those capabilities. Again, I'm not saying that people can be like Matthew Ricard or be at Vipassana all the time. That's not maybe realistic for most people and not something most people would even want to. But it just gave me this kind of personal experience that there's still like these interesting mechanisms in our bodies and that we can tap into if we need to.
Yeah. Say if you're financially set and you can achieve bliss by really not doing anything, why build another company?
Well, personally, like I almost kind of had a calling after I saw my last business. And I kind of felt so strongly about, my brother and his struggles. And I also like felt this calling to build something in mental health from a more holistic perspective, looking at the whole health. And that became my mission and hopefully my contribution. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of more a thing that kind of came to me in a sense. I just started like getting these thoughts, saw some dreams, whatever, and started like really feeling that, hey, I got to go this way. This is my next thing. And I just decided to hop on and here I am.
With all the knowledge you have about mental health, do you still get stressed? Are you able to control your mood and mindset pretty consistently?
I definitely do get stressed. I mean, like I'm a human being, I do get stressed. But I'd say that I probably have like fairly good like emotion regulation skills, meaning that like if I do get stressed and there's a lot of worries and like some big challenges that I'm facing, they will impact me for sure. I'm not immune to that, but I will also be able to recover and remember my good habits that I built over whatever last 10, 20 years that help me stay grounded, like do my exercise, remember to sleep, do my meditation every day, all these things. So, but I mean, like, yes, I do sometimes get stressed. There's harder times, that also affect me as well. But then these tools are very helpful as well.
One question before we head into our last two. Can you tell us a little bit about the value that your investors have provided beyond the financial capital? So, you have JPM, Industry Ventures, Foundry Group. How have they helped you in building this company?
They've been very, very helpful. I kind of like came from especially my first business where I had a bunch of investors that I really struggled to work with, to be honest. And I kind of brought them in myself. So it was only to blame myself. But I learned from those lessons. And like with Meru Health, we've been very particular about the people that we brought on board. And industry, Foundry, as an example, have been very, very helpful. And there's some great people like, Brad Feld, as an example, who made the investment initially from Foundry. And he has a wealth of experience and, just kind of knowledge and connections in this space. So generally very grateful for the help from these people. And they've helped making connections, bringing in other capital, very helpful advice in tough situations, guidance, challenging me, like just really good points that they're bringing up, like, hey, Kristian, should you reconsider this? Should you reconsider that? So yeah, just very, very grateful for all these people.
Last two questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Yes. So I guess like one person that I can think of now that had a really profound influence was basically Ben Horowitz and reading his books. That has somehow been like really eye-opening for me when I started reading that stuff early on. And I think Elad Gil as well, like his books as well. So, if I look at it from an entrepreneurial journey perspective and what I've learned from these books and from these people is that like how to build companies, how to get through like challenging situations, how to deal with challenges. So I think those are some people and their books that I would highly recommend.
Okay, last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Yeah. So I was actually not too long ago, like a few years ago, I co-founded kind of like an association That's called Silta, SILTA, which means a bridge in Finnish. So it's actually an association that has like a kind of a batch twice a year where they bring in Finnish early stage entrepreneurs who want to explore Silicon Valley and the US market and want to just get immersed in this awesome entrepreneurial culture here in the Valley. So they bring people in here who like need to go through an application process. It's kind of like an accelerator of sorts. And that accelerator, that kind of association has now already brought in like, I think they've done like 6-7 batches of entrepreneurs already. And many of the entrepreneurs have like started getting into this ecosystem, have raised money from local investors, stuff like that, have found customers here in the US, have learned tremendously. So yeah, that's something which I've done kind of just as a charitable cause, and I've just invested my kind of time and money in supporting that association. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. I really just wanted to kind of help other entrepreneurs also be able to find their ways here if they want to.
Excellent. Well, Kristian, want to thank you again for taking the time. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thanks, RJ. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.